Every great power commits one crime. It's not a war crime, nor a crime against humanity. It's a crime against its own currency. And it is always the first, the most lethal, and the one that defines an empire's expiration date. The Roman Empire didn't fall because of the barbarians. It fell because, from within, they destroyed the value of the denarius, reducing the silver from 100% to 5%. The Spanish Empire wasn't defeated by the British Armada. It was brought down because it used copper to mix its silver. And the American dollar? Our first mistake was identical. In 1971, Nixon took us off the gold standard, and what followed was not an era of prosperity, but the recreation on a global and digital scale of the exact same crime that destroyed Rome 2,000 years ago. We are now at stage 5 of a 7-stage collapse pattern that has never failed. And the only mystery is not whether the dollar will fall, but how much time we have left until stage 7. History is the best economics teacher, and it has given us the clearest and most expensive lesson of all. Empires are not taken down from the outside, they implode from within. And the trigger, the weapon that leaders fire themselves, is always the destruction of the currency. For 2,000 years, the script has been the same, a sequence of 7 stages that turns the world's greatest superpower into a historical footnote. What I'm about to show you is not a conspiracy theory. It is pattern recognition, the exact application of a formula that has already buried the Roman Empire, the Spanish Empire, and the British Empire. And the bad news is, the United States has already completed the first 5 stages, and we are racing towards stage 6. The story begins in Rome, 2,000 years ago. At its height, the silver denarius was the pillar of the Western world. It was valued because it was trustworthy, and it was trustworthy because it was pure, containing nearly 100% silver. But the cost of maintaining a global empire with extended military commitments and expensive social programs began to weigh heavily. An emperor needed money but did not want to raise taxes, which was politically suicidal. The solution? A crime that seemed brilliant at the time: currency debasement. Emperor Nero began to subtly reduce the silver content of the denarius. He added copper or bronze, and with the silver saved, he minted more coins. The immediate result was an artificial fiscal boom. The government had more money without raising taxes, the broader population didn't notice, and the war could be financed. Perfect, right? Wrong. It was the signing of Rome's economic death certificate. This is the essence of stage 2, currency debasement, or in our modern era, unbridled money printing. Rome did this slowly. The silver content fell from 100% to 90%, then 70%, until 200 years later, the denarius was essentially a copper coin with a silver wash. Can you imagine the real impact of this? It is inflation that steals the future of entire generations. And the worst part? This crime is not the first. It is the direct result of stage 1, military overextension. The Roman Empire had borders too vast to defend. The cost of its armies, the legions spread across 3 continents, was unaffordable. They had to choose: shrink the empire and admit weakness, politically impossible, or find a secret source of funding. Debasement was that source. The same happened with Spain. Philip II's empire was unbeatable in the 16th century, but maintaining his armada, the wars in Europe, and the colonies in the Americas required a torrent of gold and silver. When the mines of the New World were not enough, the king began to sell interest against the future flow of silver, and the government began to mix copper into the silver coins. They needed to finance military overextension, stage 1, and the monetary crime, stage 2, was the answer. In modern America, stage 1 was marked by a military commitment that began after World War II and accelerated after 9/11. Military bases spread across more than 80 countries and the trillions spent on wars in the Middle East. Stage 2, the monetary crime, occurred in 1971. The US dollar, which was backed by gold, a modern version of the denarius's purity, was disconnected by President Nixon. The government gained for the first time in history the power to print the money it needed to finance its overextension, stage 1, without any physical restriction. The digital denarius was born. Can you see the progression? It took Rome centuries to do what America did in one day: destroy the physical integrity of its currency. The inevitable consequence of stage 2 is stage 3, the debt spiral. When a government discovers it can print to pay, it loses the only incentive to be fiscally responsible. Rome's debasement led to a vicious cycle. More spending led to more debasement, which led to higher prices, inflation, which forced the government to spend even more to try to control social discontent. Spain followed the same path. They became the first empire to declare multiple sovereign defaults. They had all the gold and silver of the New World, but the government could not resist the urge to spend against the future. Spain's sovereign debt became a bad joke among European bankers. And America? We are living the climax of stage 3. The national debt, which was high, is now astronomical, more than $36.4 trillion. The annual deficit is measured in trillions. The Federal Reserve, the modern version of the emperor who debases the currency, simply monetizes the debt, prints money to buy treasury bonds. Is a financing scheme that the Roman emperor would have envied. Do you think the American debt is just a big number? Think again. The debt of Rome, Spain, and Great Britain, which also plunged deeply into debt after the two world wars, was, in its final moments, unsustainable. And ours, it moves faster than our capacity to grow. It is a mathematical certainty. But debt is not the end, it is the symptom. If this perspective has given you value so far, leave a like and follow our channel. The warning is too important to ignore. Let's dissect the disease together. Stage 3 fuels stage 4, loss of productive capacity. When a government goes into debt and debases the currency, it punishes the producer and rewards the speculator. The Roman Empire at its height produced everything from olive oil to weapons. But as the currency weakened, producers, the artisans, the farmers, saw their hard work eroded by inflation and taxes. Importing became cheaper and local production more difficult. Why work to produce goods when you can simply speculate with the government's devalued currency? The empire began to rely on cheap imports while its own industry dried up. Spain experienced the same drama. Although it imported silver, it did not use that wealth to build a productive base. It simply bought manufactured goods from neighboring countries, like Holland and Great Britain. The money came in, but went out immediately. The empire was rich, but hollow inside. And the U.S.? Deindustrialization is our stage 4. The loss of manufacturing jobs, the dependence on China and other countries for essential products, from electronics to pharmaceuticals. What remains is an economy of services and finance which is incapable of sustaining a superpower in times of crisis. It is the Roman Empire, but with iPhones instead of ceramic vases. The empire is becoming hollow, and the resulting internal fragility leads us to stage 5, social decay and fracture. History proves that a people do not tolerate inflationary theft for long. When the Roman Empire began to debase the denarius, real wealth began to concentrate in the hands of a small elite who could speculate or who were connected to the government. The plebeians and the middle class saw their standard of living fall. Social polarization, rich versus poor, anger, mistrust of institutions, extreme political division. All of this is stage 5, and it is the direct result of currency destruction. Why fight for the empire when the empire is stealing your future with inflation? Great Britain after World War II went through stage 5 with the loss of identity and the social conflicts that arose with the economic decline. Spain saw its nobility sink into debt and the population into misery. And the U.S.? Political polarization, the crisis of confidence, the division between the coast and the center of the country, the increase in social inequality. All of this is the smoke of stage 5. It is the sign that the moral foundation of the empire is crumbling, and it is the last stop before catastrophe. We are at the end of stage 5, and history is cruelly clear about what comes next. Stage 6, loss of global reserve currency status. This is the point of no return, the moment the world finally looks at the declining empire and says, I no longer trust your money. Why does the world trust the US dollar? It is not because of military strength, stage 1, and not because of the production of goods, stage 4. It is because since the 70s, the whole world needs dollars to buy oil, the petrodollar. It is an artificial, forced demand that created a captive market for our debt. It is what allows the US to print trillions without the dollar collapsing instantly. But history warns, this artificial demand is being undone. Rome lost confidence in their denarius when merchants on the borders began to demand pure gold or other commodities in exchange for goods. The British Empire lost reserve status in 1954 when the sterling pound could no longer compete with the gold-backed dollar. And today, the BRICS bloc, led by China, Russia, and Brazil, is making trade agreements in local currencies and buying gold at record levels. They are saying, we no longer need your petrodollar. We no longer finance your debt. The US dollar accounted for 70% of global reserves in 2000. Today, it is below 60%. Here is the real danger. The loss of 10% of reserve status is already alarming, but history teaches that the drop in credibility is a threshold event. It is not linear. As soon as it hits a critical point, and the threshold is always a surprise, the rest of the world rushes for the exit at the same time. It's a panic. When the sterling pound fell, it was not a gradual reduction of 1% per year. It was a sudden stampede where allied nations moved quickly to the US dollar. With the dollar, there is nowhere to run except gold or local trading currencies. Stage 6 is the removal of the anchor holding our ship. What happens when the world stops buying your debt? Stage 6 leads us inevitably and quickly to Stage 7, final collapse. This is not a slow decline, but a sudden crisis of confidence. The collapse of the dollar will not be a bankruptcy, but a currency crisis, a rampant hyperinflation that steals all paper assets, followed by a political collapse. Remember Rome. When the denarius lost its credibility, the empire could no longer finance its army. The legions revolted, trade froze, and the empire fragmented into pieces. It was fast, chaotic, and brutal. Spain also experienced a sudden fall, where sovereign bankruptcy combined with the loss of military power and social starvation. Great Britain saw its empire disintegrate in decades after losing reserve status, but the fall of real power was felt in years. The lesson of history is clear. The fall is not linear, it is exponential. You can survive stages 1 to 5 for centuries, like Rome, or decades, like Great Britain. But from the moment stage 6 materializes, the real loss of global demand for your money, the time is counted in years, perhaps months. Stage 7 is the moment when the money printer cannot keep up with the speed at which the value of money is being destroyed. In the dollar scenario, this means the $36.4 trillion debt explodes in real value. The government can no longer issue bonds to finance interest payments, which become unaffordable, or military spending. External creditors, who are already fleeing in Stage 6, stop buying treasury bonds. The only remaining buyer is the Fed itself. But with every dollar the Fed prints, it accelerates the death of the dollar's value. The climax of Stage 7 is hyperinflation followed by fragmentation. In the digital denarius scenario, this translates into 1. The cost of living becomes unbearable, destroying the remaining middle class. 2. The government cannot pay its own bills, forcing dramatic cuts in everything, from social benefits to the military. Overextension unravels through bankruptcy. 3. The loss of confidence in the dollar triggers a rush for physical assets or more stable currencies, like gold or BRICS currencies, making the dollar essentially useless for global trade and subsequently for domestic trade. The empire that became hollow inside, that fractured inside, stages 1 and 5, has no resilience to survive the credibility shock of Stage 6. History guarantees the end is fast. The question is no longer will the dollar fall, but rather, what will you do when the dollar becomes the digital denarius? The 2,000-year pattern says the fall is coming. The pattern says it will be sudden. And the pattern says the only crime that really matters is the one you commit against your own currency. We are now in the middle of Stage 5, racing toward the last 2, most dangerous stages. History has already written the end of the script, and the only thing we can do is prepare for what comes next. And what if Trump used Bitcoin to pay off the $37 trillion debt? Have you heard that story? I'll leave our latest video for you to catch up on that topic. If you want to understand how to prepare for these financial issues, subscribe so you don't miss the next videos. And tell me in the comments, what is your view on the collapse of the dollar? Don't forget to like the video. See you soon.